Folks, what I want to do is share with you some research that me and my company have been doing and help you understand that there's a lot of options that you have in the AI space. So let's dive in. So, hey everyone, my name's Mick Douglas. I'm a SANS instructor and I love it. I've been an instructor for about 15 years. And, one of the things that's really cool is getting to do show and tell, helping people understand what the realm of possible is with technology. And it's lovely that one of my hobbies and passions became such a fulfilling vocation. And so, one of the things that I want to do is share with you a project that my company, InfoSec Innovations, is making and will be supporting. And oddly, with a name like InfoSec Innovations, you have to be kind of forward leaning. And so, Concierge is the tool that we're doing to help address some problems with AI. One of the things that really is quite sobering is that there is a ridiculous AI project failure rate in most organizations. And it doesn't have to be that way. There's also odd limitations with large language models that might not be readily apparent until you start working with them, as well as there are some other options for how you can mitigate some of those issues. Retrieval augmented generation might be, depending on your use case, might be something that could be helpful. And to be candid, Concierge is a type of RAG, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But one thing, and I was looking in the Slack chat while everybody was presenting, there was a lot of concerns about, hey, how do we safely put potentially sensitive data up into this cloud? Is that going to be something that is okay? And the answer is, I don't know. It depends on what your risk model is. And so, what I've done with my crew is we're making this tool here that Concierge is our response to these primary concerns. Now, I want to be very transparent. Concierge would not exist if it weren't for the help of the SANS instructor community. I've received a lot of constructive feedback, some of it very pointed, but I love it in terms of the challenges that they say, like, hey, this tool can be better. And for those of you who are watching, whether real time or on the recording, I'd love to hear critiques on how we can make this be a tool that might be more optimal or giving you options for addressing some of the concerns and more that you may have. And I want to be clear, Concierge is not meant to replace tools like the GPT series by OpenAI. It's not meant to replace Gemini by Google. It's meant to be another option. So let's talk about some of these problems. The AI project failure rate is absolutely horrific and is something that we're not talking about nearly enough, not just in the information security space, but in general IT overall. And I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but there's approximately an 80% failure rate for AI projects. And that's not just some made up, BS statistic. That's actually grounded in hard science. This was actually a quote that came from a professor from the Harvard Business School last year on the Harvard Business Review IdeaCast, which is a podcast that I highly, highly recommend. They were talking about the problems with getting AI stood up, running, and working as expected. And so, to that end, one of the core tenets of Concierge is that we want to make it to be as low drag for you to get up and running and using this tool. A crazy key guiding goal around this is to have a just add data approach. And so here, let's do a live demo of what that may mean or what this can be. So you should be seeing the Concierge UI here. And the way this works is you can go into collection management and then create a collection to house documents or logs or data of any particular type that strikes your fancy. So in this case, I'm going to do one for, let's just call it NIST 800 171. Now, for speed's sake, I'm going to just upload a single PDF, but you could, if you wanted, have multiple documents. So what you then do is you go into the loader and you'll select which collection you want the data to be loaded into. You click Browse Files. Let me go here, demo, and we're going to go into Concierge. So the 171R2, for those who aren't familiar, this is the how to protect non-federal standards, and it's quite a lengthy PDF. It's at least 140 pages in length. What just happened, that little progress bar, Concierge read, air quotes around that, it read the PDF a page at a time and then split those pages into small blocks. I want to give credit where it's due. This is a technique that I picked up from David Holzer at CDI last year in December, and like inspiration at just the right time, because we were playing around with doing stuff like this, but this vectorization and splitting it the way that he did works out really well, because now what you can do is here, let's hold on a second, let me refresh. What you can now do once that data is loaded, you can go into the prompter, pick the collection that you want to ask questions about, and then one of the things that's neat, and you'll see here in a second, Concierge will actually give you references and respond to a particular element. So let's try this. What is multi-factor authentication? So you ask that question, and it gives you the references from where in the document it came, like where that answer is being derived, and then it generated, this is net new text here. This is in response to the reference material that was given. Now, the thing that's really cool about this is these are all clickable links. So if you click them, it literally takes you to the material that is the source for your particular question. And the thing that's lovely about this now is you have the ability to very crisply and cleanly see how the model, how your AI is responding to your questions, which is amazing and something that we've been enjoying a lot. Um, for those who are participating live, I just had an issue. Slack crashed on my machine, so I'm not going to be answering or addressing any Slack stuff until after my talk. I'm very sorry about that, but I want to just set expectations. So that's a quick tease into what you can do with Concierge, but there's some more interesting subtle things that I want to talk about first. We've been talking a lot in the industry as a whole about large language models, and they're nothing new. They've kind of captured the attention of folks. And one of the things that I find a bit odd is that many of the projects that are out there make standing up a LLM a lot harder than it needs to be. And in some cases, there's people actively advocating that you create your own LLM, your own model. And there's a time and a place for that, but I don't think that that's something that most folks should do. And I'm not trying to poo-poo that. There is a time and a place for it, but creating an LLM is actually a little tricky. So the idea that you have some training set that you trust and you can ingest and have the AI consume it, and then have the transformation process being done to create this highly compressed representation of that data. I mean, that's neat and all. That's a lot of work. And for most use cases, my contention is it's unneeded. So what we do with Concierge is you actually pick the model that you want at install time. And again, one of our guiding principles behind Concierge is that it should be fall out the chair, easy to set up and use. And here's a screen capture from the install. Once you download the Concierge project and run the install, as of right now, there's 7 questions. We'll probably have a few more before we hit the 1.0 release. But one of the questions that we ask is, which language model do you want to have? And we're using the Mistral 7B, which is a fairly small model. It only takes about 4.1 gig of space, and the memory requirements are quite modest, which is nice because this allows Concierge to run locally, which is something I'll get into in just a little bit. So let's stick a pin there and I'll come back. Now, one thing that's neat about LLM, the way they work and why they've caught our attention, I really like what Dave earlier said, is that we can, in human language, talk to these tools, and through natural language processing, they're able to come up with answers that are very good to us and very appealing. The problem is this model itself. Here, let me get my pen here. The model itself might not be trained on data that you care about, right? Like this model might have dated information, it might have incorrect information. There's plenty of reasons that we might not trust the model. And there's other issues too. I feel that not enough folks talk about hallucinations. And part of the issue when it comes to hallucinations is that we just don't know what's going on with our data, you know. Sometimes the AI, by the way, the reason we call these hallucinations is the AI isn't ever right or wrong. We'll talk about in terms of acceptable responses, but the AI, it has no idea what it's saying. What's happening is it receives this, going back a slide, couple slides, this prompt encoding is where things can go wrong frequently because it doesn't understand the input, it doesn't understand the output. It's doing pattern recognition and pattern response. So if any of these bits go wrong, you can wind up with hot garbage as a response. But what's even more insidious is when you get a response that is subtly wrong. It appears to be right, but it's not at all. So one thing that you need to remember is that every AI out there, no matter how sophisticated, no matter how well financed, they're like this dog doing science. It's doing stuff. Nobody knows how that dog got there. Nobody knows what the dog's doing, including that dog. And that's what our AIs are. So one of the reasons that AI research has been advanced greatly recently is that we're having a new critique of these tools and we're moving to things like retrieval augmented generation or RAG. This too is not a new concept. This has been around for a while. So the idea behind a RAG is instead of just having the interaction with the model, there's some referential data, you know, maybe it's from a search engine, maybe it's from a trusted data set that's used in formulating the response. It's not too complicated, but once you have that additional context from whatever tool, you'll get the response, and then it's usually things like language models are used to kind of smooth the answer and make it be approachable and human readable. And this works pretty okay. But different RAG types are out there, and some of them have different issues. So API or search engine backed, this can be a problem if the API is offline. You know, we've seen outages in the cloud. Search engines will sometimes have bad data, or you know, search engine optimization attacks will make it so that you get, you know, non-desirable results. Like, you know, Google and a lot of search engines aren't giving us the outputs that we would like. Also, some RAGs will use external predefined data sets. Those can be expensive and difficult to set up, and there's frequently some pretty serious copyright issues with these. What my favorite types of RAGs are, and this is what Concierge is, it's a self-trained AI, it's a self-trained RAG on data that you provide. And that's what you just saw. I gave it that NIST document and it built a vector database, and it was using that vector database to answer your problems. So these clouds might not be trustworthy. You can get bad search responses, and the data input absolutely can be challenging. These are things that I feel that Concierge does handle and solves quite nicely for most users. There is still, despite our best efforts, though, there's still one issue that Concierge has. It still can hallucinate. It's a little more hallucination resilient, but it's not perfect. You always have to trust but verify. So, little recap, Concierge is a RAG. More correctly, it's a self-referencing modular offline RAG. Here's a visual representation of it. Right now, Concierge will consume PDFs and web pages. We will very soon, in the next month or so, be able to support Microsoft Office documents. You put those in the collections, and then you can ask for information about those collections. And here, we'll do another quick demo. So let's close that. Let's go to Prompter. And let's ask a question. SANS 497 is the OSINT class. So you could ask something like, what is OPSEC? And in a moment, you get the references, and then it explains what OPSEC is, which this is amazing, amazing. It allows you to very quickly find data that's of interest in large data sets. And it's all offline. So you can create as many collections as you need. This allows you to organize data to your liking. The collection manager system is something that you can use to create other collections. You can see how much content is in them. And in later revisions, we'll have the ability to move data from collection to collection. We don't have that yet, but we will. Concierge is self-referencing. You've already seen that where we have these references on the search results. But what's even cooler is if you go to Prompter, you can ask Concierge to only give you information without an AI response. So if I click search, I can say, show me about OPSEC. And you get the references without any AI opinion. And you can click that, and then after a moment, you will load up. Oh no, demo fail. After a moment, what should happen is you will get the content loading up that was used for this particular bit of reference. So it's awesome. So that's search mode. Concierge is constrained by the data you feed it. This is part of the reason that Concierge is very hallucination resilient, because it won't go out and get untrusted data. It's only trained on your data. You can also use it to do things like checking facts. And one of the things that I like is, so you go fact check, you can do a search like, we no longer need to practice OPSEC. And after a moment, we get this answer, we no longer need to practice OPSEC is not true based on the context provided. For those of you who are in media, definitely reach out and come in contact with me, because this whole fact check function is to help fight disinfo online. I have been using it to great effect quietly. I'd love to get the word out more on this function. Now, the thing that really makes Concierge special, in my opinion, is that it works 100% offline. Here's a block of the code from Concierge, and you don't need to be a code ninja to key in on this key thing. All the data, we're doing this all locally. Also, because this is local, we can do some things that cloud providers cannot do. A moment ago, we were talking about tokens. Concierge has no hard token limits. Now, depending on your model that you'll use, there may be some token limits. Like a Mistral 7B has a 128,000 theoretical token limit. As you approximate that, it becomes very, very slow. But what's amazing is compare that to some of the GPT models where your token limit is 4,000 tokens. This is a huge, huge improvement. One other thing that's neat about Concierge is that we've flipped how system prompts work on their ear. Now, system prompts, for those of you who don't know, when you make a request of one of these generative AI tools, you type your user prompt, but there's usually a wrapper where additional context, additional elements of a question are added. And for most users, this is way beyond their technical ability and is frankly something that they shouldn't have to do. With Concierge, we have broken system prompts down into a modular unit that we call tasks. And you've already seen how this works. In the prompter, tasks are predefined system prompts that allow you to generate content based off of what particular use case you're after. The prompts, and we don't have time to get into this, but you can make your own prompts and have them entirely locally. Nobody on the concierge team will ever see what your prompts are unless you choose to submit them back to the project. So this is a really, really cool opportunity for you to extend and play and have your own local AI. Your data is local, your prompts are local, and even the logs are all local, which is great because some of my clients, even if they're working with public data, they might be worried about some of the liabilities that may be asked just from the prompts they're giving. Maybe they're asking spicy questions that if you don't have the proper context around that question, it may seem like they're up to no good. But you have to ask those questions. With Concierge, you can now safely do that, knowing that your prompt will never leave your system unless you let it go. So I want to show you another thing, counterpoint. This is an indicator of how far you can go with this sort of capability. So, counterpoint is a prompt where you make a statement, and Concierge will give you a series of rebuttals to help sharpen your argument. So, you could say this. For some reason, I'm still thinking about matters of OPSEC. So, let's just go with a fairly general one. OPSEC does not need to be done early in an USINT investigation. Let's see what this comes up with. So it gave some references, and now it gave rebuttals. And let's see here. We got the retroactive OPSEC efforts can leave critical information exposed. That's pretty good. Early implementation of OPSEC practices ensures a stronger security posture throughout. That's pretty good. The lack of initial OPSEC considerations can lead to unintentionally revealing. So that's also good. So let's go to 4. Proper OPSEC from the start reduces the attack surface for adversaries, minimizing. Man, 4 for 4 so far. Let's go to 5. Oh my gosh, 5. So this allows you to sharpen your arguments, review documentation critically, slice through pallets of documentation. I already have a few clients that are using Concierge to great effect, including those that are in highly regulated industries where they have a lot of documentation, a lot of regulatory requirements. Being able to find what's required of them and what is needed is a godsend for these folks. So let's talk a little bit about where we go from here, because Concierge, as I demoed it right now, that is the 0.1 version of Concierge. We have a robust roadmap and we're actively pursuing it. And frankly, we would love some help on this journey. So here's some of the high level things that we're planning on doing. We're actively working on the install, working on macOS. There's a pull request that came in from one of my staff from a little bit ago. We're doing some final QA tests on it, and then we'll be adding better logging. And we're looking to have a system that will be very, very safe for most organizations to use if they're worried about regulatory or risk issues. Now, here's something that I haven't talked about yet. Because of the modeling, the way that we're doing things, Concierge does not require a GPU. Now, for transparency's sake, the machine that I was using for this demo, I'm VPN'd into a system back home. That machine is using an NVIDIA 4070, not the highest end, not the lowest end, but I did that for sake of speed. If you're not using a GPU, most of the queries that we did in this demo will take about a minute, minute and a half. The rebuttal one, the argumentative one, that might have taken maybe 2 minutes. So Concierge will run on commodity hardware, any modern system. Also, a couple things to note about Concierge is it's going to be free as in liberty and free as in beer. Concierge is by that you saw in the framework that exists is all Apache 2 license, and all of the components that we're using in Concierge are 100% OSS. So there's not going to be any odd license surprises or issues that you run into. And though we will have monetization when we hit the 1.0 version, there'll be some like consulting things and stuff. We're not there yet. But when we are, there will be some support options, like for organizations that require support contracts. We will absolutely help you with that. But we're not going to be paywalling the thing. We will have concierge always. There will always be a free tier for it. So hopefully this whetted your appetite and you want to get started. To get started, go to dataconcierge.ai, and here this is the concierge.ai site. Here, let's put that up here. Oh dear, it's very small. What you're going to want to do is click this get it on GitHub. That will take you to the GitHub repo where Concierge is out, and you can start pulling down all the data and get it all set up. We have a nice walkthrough on how to get it started. And if you run into any issues in playing around with it, definitely let us know. We want it to be a very easy and low drag setup for you. But this is how you get it going in just a few moments. And if you're a dev, here's some help that we would love to have. Also, remember, concierge, we're still alpha, so check the work. And one important note, we are going to be changing the database system and the database schema. So if you start using this tool in a production environment, you will need to reload data. We will absolutely not do data transforms for moving from the 1.0 to I'm sorry, O.1 to O.2. So let's have some fun. Thanks for attending, and go get dataconcierge.ai, or concierge as we call it, and I'll be loading Slack back up and answering your questions starting now. Thank you all.